bots testing bots is really, really tricky, right? To an AI, they might be like, yeah, this sounds great. And we listen back to it and we're like, oh no, this was not good. Like there's a compliance risk in there underneath that this bot doesn't understand. So it can be really tricky. It can be time saving, but it can also put you in an interesting position if you lean too much on it.
Hey, Sherice, it's so great to have you on How They Test. Thank you so much for making time today. Looking forward to our conversation. Why don't we get kicked off here? Could you tell folks a little bit about what company you work for, how long you've been there, and what kind of a typical day in the life looks like for you these days?
Yeah, for sure. First of all, thanks for having me. Really excited. The company I work for is called Entratus AI. It's a startup, so every day is very, very different. But a typical day for me would be working pretty closely with our engineering team, our QA team, and our executive stakeholders to deliver updates to a range of products that we have. We have like B2B products. We have our internal AI assistants that we have, as well as other platforms and websites that we've built and we maintain. So a lot going on, a lot of things that we're testing all at once. So organization is key, but yeah, I've got my hands in like a million different pots every day.
You mentioned that Entratus is a startup. Can you tell us a little bit about what the company's doing? What's the product that you have available to folks?
Yes. So Entratus is a startup. We build AI assistants for businesses that want to bring AI to their customers to either streamline processes, reduce cost, or even just improve customer experience. Our company and our founder, Seth, kind of got into AI in this industry that we are in now to improve the customer experience and to reduce bias. So our whole mission is to empower customers to be able to make educated decisions with AI to help guide them, right? To answer questions, to break things down, and so that they feel that they aren't being kind of driven by, potentially a human agent or sales agent that has ulterior motives or commission-based motives. So that's really why we got into the business.
What does it look like to do testing in that kind of environment where you're serving so many different products? You've got the internal products you're working on testing, you've got external or customer facing. What kind of test strategy do y'all keep to keep the trains rolling?
Yeah, so we have a combination of a lot of different testing, which I think most people are probably familiar with. Like we have some automated test cases that we run through, like Cypress. We have unit tests. We also use automated testing through AI. So we have little runner AI assistants that we've made. We kind of give them a persona and have these little small, simple AI assistants train our larger system before we deploy for a client or for internal testing. So we run like simulation testing, and that's really helpful because we're able to run like 100 conversations in an hour. Whereas with our manual QA team, that would take days to run 100 conversations. So our testing strategy is mixed. I would say we lean mostly on manual human testing, though, at the moment, because it is more reliable. Testing bots is really, really tricky, right? To an AI, they might be like, yeah, this sounds great. And we listen back to it and we're like, oh no, this was not good. Like there's a compliance risk in there underneath that this bot doesn't understand. So it can be really tricky. It can be time saving, but it can also put you in an interesting position if you lean too much on it. So our testing strategy is just whatever we can do, given, the small team that we have and the AI resources that we have.
Did you have to change how you planned for testing when you're doing that kind of AI simulation testing? Like, did you have to come up with new ways of defining test data or prompts, or how you were actually going to track the output of that testing? Because unlike a more typical automated test or even a more manual scripted test, I can imagine the criteria for what qualifies as a passing test in a kind of AI simulated test might be a little fuzzier than a strict, like, oh, did that button open that next tab or something like that?
Exactly. Yeah, you're exactly right. It's extremely nuanced and it's tricky. There are even times where, to me or somebody on our QA team, might say, yeah, this was a passing test. and our compliance officer looks at it and it's like, no, this is a red flag right here. And we may not catch those things like that. So there's so many things we have to account for. We document as much as we possibly can. But that's why we lean more on humans, because they can go through a list a little bit more in a more detailed way than AI could. And the more information you give a bot to test another bot, the more likely they are to kind of mess up and run into an issue. So it's really, really tricky. Testing is ongoing here. So it's also a startup. So we're moving really, really fast as we possibly can without our wheels falling off. But yeah, we're constantly testing. And it's funny because sometimes we'll test and everything will look good. And then we push a little small update and tomorrow it's a completely different experience. But you will never have that experience when you're testing like a website, right? It's pretty straightforward. It's pretty binary. This button is going to do something where it's not.
That sounds like it could be a serious challenge for testing. I'm curious, would you say that that's probably the biggest challenge that you have, that your team has, testing the kind of products that you're developing? Or is there something else that comes to mind when you think about like, man, the really like the hardest thing that we've had to deal with in the last year is something else? I'm curious. Is that, because that sounds like it could be pretty thorny, but I don't know if anything else comes to mind also.
Yeah. So that I would say it's a mix between making sure we test everything we possibly can with, a given amount of time. It's between that and identifying why we ran into the issue, right? With a website, if you click a button and it fails, it's a lot easier to figure out why that failed. Whereas with a bot, if you're talking to it and she says something different today than she did last time you asked her this question, it's extremely difficult to figure out why it was that she decided to say that differently and why. And it's really hard to train her to understand why it's not the right way to say something. So it's really difficult to identify why, so we can explain it to the developer, but also making sure we test everything if we can.
In terms of like a sprint cycle or something like that, how do y'all strategize about what kinds of testing to do when to try to accomplish that 360-degree test goal that you've got? It sounds like you're trying to test everything. Obviously, that can be pretty challenging, especially depending on like what resources you have available. Have you all found a formula that's been working more often than not for you, just in terms of what testing you do when and how that relates to like the overall development cycle? Or is that still something that you guys are working out?
We're definitely still working on it. I think it can get better. It's still a little rocky at the moment, mainly because we have a pretty small QA team of about 4 people, and only 2 of them are full-time testers. The other 2, like, we split with other things. But I would say that it works for us to test the risky scenarios first, test her guardrails first, right? Make sure that she's staying on track. Then we kind of start testing new features. We specifically go down those new paths, which we've opened up for her. We test her responses to those. Because if we can sign off from a compliance and security perspective, like she's not going to say something wrong, she's not going to mislead the customer, there's no risk, and the features are working, then we can start going down, okay, what's her personality like, right? Is she still as friendly as she usually is? Is she forgetting to ask really important questions that are a part of this funnel, the sales funnel? So then we kind of get into the personality. So that's more or less the order in which we're kind of testing most important things first, and then new features, and then personality and all the other objective things. But I don't know if that's the best way. That's the way that we're doing it now. And a lot of times we're testing all these things at once. So we do what we can.
I think one thing that I've noticed with the teams that we speak with is oftentimes teams are really focused on what they can do to improve. And they know like there's always ways to improve and they're under pressure to improve. It can be harder to step back and look at the wins or successes that you've had. So I'm curious if you just take a moment now to think about, like, I don't know, the last 6 months, last couple of releases, last year, or whatever time frame makes sense. Do you feel like there's anything that y'all were actually very successful and that you did work out that you've adopted into your process now?
I mean, I think a huge part of our testing process was adopting Testmo, truly, because before, if you can believe it, we were running and organizing our test through Microsoft Forms. So we were creating a Microsoft form, and every time there was a new scenario to test, we added it to the form, and it got so long and ridiculous that we were like, okay, we have to do something else. It was really supposed to be a short-term solution, and ended up something that we were using for way too long. So test mode has been really helpful. It saves us a lot of time with going in and just updating test cases in the repository and maintaining it. Super easy to train people on it as well. Like nobody on our team has trouble using it. But I think ultimately our successes are just the amount of effort and passion that our team has, like our QA team and other folks that jump in. We are a startup, so we have people on other teams that jump in and actually help test, and we'll get on test mode and run test cases and help us, run as many as we possibly can to make sure that everything is running smooth. Our last release, we had I think over 600 manual test conversations that we did. It was across quite a few months, but it was just all day, full time testing on all channels for this bot. So I think that's been a huge key to our success as well. We're getting more organized, which is really, really important. But everybody on the team works really hard and is really passionate. So we're able to hit our goals despite being such a small team and not always running the most efficient process.
And then from all the different experimentation that you've been doing, y'all have been running fast as a startup. I'm curious if there are any other specific tips or advice that you would share for teams, maybe especially teams that are just getting into testing AI functionality in their product. It sounds like this is something that your team has actually had maybe a bit more experience than some other teams out there. But yeah, just in general, any tips or advice that you might share with other teams that you've learned along the way?
I would say don't wait too long to test. It doesn't really matter what the product is. Don't wait too long to test. We run into that issue where we're like, that seems fine. Our team is good. Our engineers are great. We'll just test it, right before launch. Don't do that. We do that, especially as a startup. We always find way, way more issues than we thought. And I would also say just be careful when it comes to testing with AI. Regardless of whether you are testing an AI system that your company has built, or if you're using an AI system from a testing platform to write test cases and to run test cases, just be careful. Testing AI is still in its early stages, and we do it all the time, but don't rely too heavily on that being your only testing. Don't trust the results a little bit too much unless it's really, really basic binary type of testing that the bot can't possibly mess up. Because AI, just by nature, it's going to mess up. It's going to make things up and be wrong, and that's okay. But just be careful, pay attention to it. If you're aware of that, then you won't be in a position where you test it only through AI and you think everything is stable, right? So that would be my advice.
That's awesome. Yeah, it'll be interesting to see where we're at with this conversation in even a year from now because of how quickly things are moving, in large part thanks to startups like you, but yeah, that makes a lot of sense. Awesome. Well, Sherice, thank you so much for making time again. This has been awesome. It's great to have you on, and wishing all the luck to you and the whole team as y'all continue to get out product and grow the company.
Thank you so much. This has been great.